What if the real addiction most of us are struggling with is not alcohol, drugs, food, or success, but actually disconnection from the source? What if healing is not about fixing what is broken, but remembering what was never lost? What was this is Rosabel Unscripted, where courage meets healing, and today's guest, Justin Shaw. He's a former stand-up comedian, he's an author, a spiritual teacher, who also spent decades inside what he calls sick care system, cycling through trauma, addiction, emotional pain, and labels without true healing. That journey has led him to create a different map, one that is rooted into spirituality, humor, and responsibility. Now sharing his book, Sourcery 101, 13 Rungs to a Higher Elevation of Consciousness. Justin, I'm really glad you're here.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. Justin, why don't we start where things actually shift? You spent years inside of systems that like describe meant to manage symptoms, right? Not to restore wholeness. What was the moment that you realized, okay, this isn't working anymore?
Yeah, it's not necessarily the fault. I never like to place doctors are an amazing thing. Doctors are fantastic. And I never like to paint them in any sort of negative context at all because they've done amazing things and incredible things for us. But the thing sometime in that late 18th century there, that they had the body figured out, and coming into kind of the 19th century, coming in the 20th century, that you've got the body figured out. So let's try to figure out the mind. And where everything has gone completely awry in the Western way of doing medicine is that everything is held separate. The body and mind were held separate. And the spirit, it is the body, mind, spirit. No healing will ever happen unless you're doing the full triangle, body, mind, spirit. And the spirit can't be proved, so let's throw that out. And the mind, there's no correlation. We can't find a correlation between mind and body, so keep them all separate. They're very correlated, is what I've come to find out. And I like to use analogy. So doctors are amazing when it comes to acute injuries. Fantastic. We need them. So if I were to fall off a ladder and I had a bone sticking out of my arm, this probably isn't the best time for meditation or acupuncture. The bone needs to be set and the surgery needs to happen. But after the doctor does that, the doctor's part is now done. The body heals itself. And so what I've found out in terms of trauma, anything labeled chronic, there's something going on energetically that needs to be. You're not going to go to a doctor's office, and they're doing better these days. Like, how's your stress level? But it's still not enough. And so when you focus on the spirit, amazing things happen. And what I figured out is we need to figure out how to set the emotional bone and let the body heal itself. Not figured out is how to set emotional so that it heals itself. Because if it doesn't, if we don't set it right, then that trauma, it's just like when a bone doesn't heal. If it doesn't heal properly and you don't get it set, you touch it, you get a reaction. It hurts. You're always aware of your hurt arm. You're always going to be aware of it. Don't touch it. Stay away from it. You're always going to get a reaction instead of a response. And that's the same thing with trauma. Someone touches that traumatic thing that hasn't healed and you get a reaction. And society is full of these reactors. And so sorcery is about responding. So the moment I realized that was in this amazing, blissful awakening moment. And it was, I call it a bliss attack. And because that's the only way I can explain it. And it was coming after a lot of things that had happened in my life that just were really tough. My mother at the time was terminal, and I had this Christian background as well as the AA background, and that's what was supposed to be helping me. I was also taking a lot of medication and pills at the time for anxiety and depression. And so these pills, Christianity, AA, these things were not working for me anymore. And so I ditched my pastor for a shaman after my mother officially passed, because it really messed with my head, especially the Christianity portion of it, thinking that she was going to hell because she wasn't a practicing Christian. And that's just made things a million times worse. So it was at my lowest level that I started meditating. I started opening myself up to new things, and I started questioning things that I thought were true, but maybe weren't so true. Maybe they're not correct. Maybe this whole hell thing is just made up, and it's just made up to control people and to instill fear so that You keep people in the seats. Maybe it's been this way for millennia, and maybe none of this is true. And so all these realizations start coming to me. And I had this moment of bliss where it was like 3 hours. It was like I've been on airplane mode my whole life. So a phone in airplane mode is not living up to its full potential. It's still useful, but it's not living up to its full potential. You're not going to get the emails and texts and all the messages, right? So in this moment, it was like I just knew all these things because I was getting like attacked with these waves of love. So 3 hours of feeling this love and getting these downloads of these things that I knew were true because of how I was feeling in the moment. And so knowing the pills and the Western society and the Western way of dealing with chronic illness and mental illness is not right. And all these amazing things. And the religion is causing separation. It's really not as good as it's cracked out to be. And I just realized we were surrounded by this energetic field, source energy. And that's where the word sorcery, it's spelled with a U because I can't teach anyone how to turn into a frog just yet. But that healing, it's real magic, sorcery. So that's where it all came from. And explaining source energy to someone is a bit like explaining water to a fish. That would be difficult to do. Surrounds you, you're alive because of it. You move because of it. You breathe because of it. Everything's because of this substance that surrounds you. And a fish would be like, I don't get it. What are you talking about? So that is the moment where everything shifted.
And so you do define, or you make a statement, I think it's in your book, that you talk about spiritual bankruptcy. So what does that mean to you, and how is that different from how we usually approach or how we talk about our mental illnesses or addiction?
Yeah, so that is at the root of everything. Everything else is just a symptom. Depression, anxiety, ADD, addiction, even more physical things like autoimmune disorders that cause physical, even cancer. There is one core issue happening. Your body is responding to this trauma that you haven't processed correctly. And your body, mind, it's all the same thing. And it just comes out in these different, and there is no symptom discrimination when it comes to sorcery. I created this thing that's a blueprint for healing. It is in itself a map. It's a map for other people to awaken. And what it does is get to the root core issue of everything. It would be like the kind of Western medicine approach to things would be if people were having a lunch once a month and 190 out of 100 people got deathly ill. Western medicine would want to dole out medicine to 90 of those people without looking at the root cause, which is the food being served in this case is spiritual bankruptcy. And the way it shows itself is completely different for everybody, but it's all the same thing. So that core issue, and I suffer from depression, or I suffer from anxiety, or I suffer from addiction. Let's just stop at I suffer because it's all the same thing. Healing can come from everything. And so that was one thing I didn't vibe with the AA way of thing is because they're highly discriminatory. If you don't have an alcohol problem, you're not even welcome at an AA meeting. And it's specifically alcohol. Even if you talk about drugs in an alcohol meeting, let alone your anxiety or depression, you talk about drugs in an alcohol meeting, they don't like that, which is insane because alcohol is a drug. So I never vibed with that. And there's a lot of symptom discrimination when it's all the same thing. And that's one of the things that came to me in this kind of realization that it's all one issue. If you can get to that core issue, you can just slowly fades with time. There's no real big instant moment. It's just work over time, rewiring the brain and healing. And so there is no healed. There is only healing, which is very important to understand. When you've been shot in the arm, you need to take the bullet out. Okay, it heals up and it's better, but there's still a scar. But that's much better than a gaping wound. If it wasn't healed properly, then again, you get into that thing where you touch it and you get a reaction. If it's done properly, it's removed and it's fine. You can touch it and there's no reaction, but there's still a scar and there will always be a scar. So that's the thing with trauma is getting to that scar point. And so once you can detach the emotional reaction from a thought or a memory, now your trauma has been alchemized into wisdom. And that's where I'm trying to get people to create that wisdom and healing, because healing is out there. I've been through the ringer and I've done it. So it is possible.
And so from your book, I read the intro of your book and the first chapter, and I wanted to pull up a few questions that got inspired by that. And in there, you say, healing begins with relationships, not willpower. I want to know what relationships are you specifically talking about in there? And why do most people try to change that? Let's just start there and we'll go to the next one in a minute.
Yeah, I mean, it is critical to have some relationships with people and have that because there's a big difference between isolation and solitude. And we all need solitude once in a while. Too much solitude turns into isolation and walking that fine line. And we live in a world where we're very disconnected from each other because of the technology and the phone. And so we feel like we're connected to each other, but we're really just connected to the phone. And yeah, we're talking to people, but it's not the same thing. Creating a relationship with yourself, a better relationship. How are you talking to yourself and creating your eternal self that is on the other side of the simulation, if you will? Creating that relationship with yourself is number one, but also creating relationship with others. And that's one thing that AA does have. And I would never tell someone to not go to AA meeting because they have this amazing community that, and you can find one anywhere in the world and you can talk to people, be around people. It's wonderful. And there's some stuff I don't agree with, but what I do agree with is the communal aspect of AA. That's fantastic. And creating like-minded people around you as much as possible. Online is fine, an online community, all well and good, but getting around people and feeling that energy of being around people. And there's a lot of healing in others that are going through similar situations. Creating relationships, it's just important for people to get out there. Every once in a while, solitude is necessary once in a while, but too much solitude becomes isolation. And I think we have too many isolated people out there that are
Right.
just
You're
at
talking
home.
about finding a balance,
Yeah.
not
Yep. So that's what I'm talking about with creating relationship. But first and foremost with your higher self,
right.
create that relationship. But then yeah, bring in other people. There's other people. And one of the things in the Bible that I love is iron sharpens iron. One person is helping the other. Even if one person's further along in their healing journey, I'm helping someone who's really struggling. It may seem to that other person that I'm helping them more, but that's an illusion. They're helping me just as much. And so
Right.
iron sharpens iron. And that is huge for healing. Don't internalize everything.
Why do you think most people try to change their behavior before their consciousness?
Because it's the easiest thing to change. And it's easier to change something about yourself in terms of behavior and kind of force that. But the beautiful thing is if you change your consciousness first, the behavior is just comes naturally. There's no forcing that's necessary. I don't force myself to be sober every day. It just comes naturally. There's no desire whatsoever to do any sort of substance, weed, or anything. I've done it and I've been there, and there's just no it's just so natural. Like I don't have to force myself to not do things. And if you change your consciousness first, you just know the route to go. It gives you the right route to go. You just know what is healthy for you and what is not. And there's an inner voice that just says, put the cake down. You had a little slice that's, you don't need three or four. There is this inner voice, and there's no forcing as opposed to just like putting it down and like forcing it, being, I can't have that. You just don't want it. And that's where you want to be is like, you just want to naturally be like, no, I'm not going to feel good. You start living in, instead of having that euphoric recall, which is what is so dangerous for people with drugs, alcohol, food addiction, sex addiction, whatever it is, they're thinking of the high in the moment and how good that feels without thinking of the after and consequences. So when your consciousness changes, you're in the afterthought instead of in that high moment. You start thinking is, I'm not going to, no, I don't want to do that. I'm not going to feel good later. That's in terms of food's one of the biggest addictions. Food and the phone are the two biggest addictions society is struggling with. And so I like to use those because not everyone struggles with drugs and alcohol, but food and the phone, everyone can get their head around that. And like, maybe I need to put that down because it's going to be indigestion tonight. Then I'm not going to sleep well. Then I'm going to be tired in the morning. And I'm not going to feel well in the morning. It's just like you live in that instead of living in that moment of sugar high and that lasts for what, 2 minutes? And
I
then
was I was
it's
just gonna
gone.
mention that when you do change your consciousness first than your behavior, you obtain a much more lasting benefit of it. I remember when I did that thing where I tried to change my behavior and then I went right back to the beginning. There was no real change. When you change your consciousness, it's just like you say, it just comes to you. Let's talk about the humor that you bring in your pop culture into that very deep material that you are sharing in your book and your story. I know you're a former stand-up comedian,
Mhm.
and so I want to know how has humor helped you survive and how does it help people heal?
There is so much healing in humor, so much. And it's really just a wonderful thing. And to put the comedy thing on the back burner, which is what I did when I got sober a long time ago in my late 20s, there is when I got sober and I tried to go back to the comedy scene. And I just realized it was a really unhealthy environment for me. The late nights and the alcohol, and there's other comedians that have drugs on them. And it's just was not a healthy atmosphere anymore. And if I wanted to go to a stand up routine, if I get up there at 10 o'clock at night and the audience is half drunk, nobody wants to start with a meditation. I'm going to get booed off the stage. I need a little bit more of an elevated audience now. So I'm
Right.
creating something that doesn't exist. Mystical comedy. What is that? I don't know. I'm just making it up as I go along. It's not just making people laugh anymore. It's about making them think and feel as well. If you have someone laugh, think, and feel, well, now you've got growth and healing and bringing that in, especially the book. The book is very funny. And that's how Jesus was such an effective spiritual teacher, because he spoke the language of the time and he was able to take this source energy, this incredible thing that he was just gifted with, but he was able to explain it in ways that people understood. The parables he would use and things like that. And so they're a little outdated now. They're 2,000 years old. They're still effective. But now I believe the language of these times is pop culture and humor and technology metaphors. I told you about being on airplane mode. And so there's a lot of technology metaphors in the book. There's a lot of pop culture parables. I believe, the secrets of the universe are hidden in the nooks and crannies of pop culture. And so there's all these movies that I grew up on and all these movies I've seen that once I had this awakening and this bliss attack, I look back on these movies and say, holy crap, there's a hidden message in here that I never got. Look at Groundhog Day. Its few movies are that deep. He starts in this really negative energy. He gets stuck in this
Uh-huh.
small town that his energy repeats the same day over and over, and it gets worse and worse, repeats the same day. And then all of a sudden he starts changing his energy and his whole world shifts around him. And now this little town that was his hell is now his heaven. And it was all just because he shifted his energy. And now it starts all over. He did that by changing his energy. And so there's
Mhm.
all these movies out there that are just
Yes.
absolutely incredible. And so the book is full of those examples of movies that I've seen that
Yeah.
just are like, here's how this works, and here's a movie to explain it.
One
And they're
movie
all
that
over the
comes to
place.
mind is The Truman Show.
That it is
Oh,
just like that.
Idiocracy? Did you mention that one?
Oh my God. Yeah. I've seen that a million times. And we lived through that. We're living through that now. And they've been great predictors. And like you go look back in old movies and they're coming true. But there's just so many messages in so many movies. But it was just so fun to be able to write and
Have you seen
look at these
Office
movies.
Space?
Oh,
Office
sure. Yeah.
Space?
Yeah. I'm a
That's one of my.
cinephile. I've probably seen that movie like 90 times, let me tell you. That was more just to make you laugh, but it
I've
has a
seen it.
message. It does, because it's the energy thing, and he wakes up and lives his dream life through his energy, and everything starts changing around him. It's the same thing.
Can't
There's this
relate to
hidden
that
message.
because when I watched that movie, I was going through. Actually, my husband is the one who said, "Hey, you should watch this movie because it felt like it." So he got me a mug that said "Initech." Now bring it to work.
That's awesome. I want that mug now. Yeah.
And so I'll be like, and I was drinking through it, and people, but you could tell that they have not seen the movie.
Yeah, no, that's a shame, because that is an all-time classic. That gets in the book. That's one of the first things I say is source is the force. And I always tell people,
Exactly.
may the source be with you, because that's the best explanation for source energy, for God, whatever. It is the force. And I can't move things with my mind or anything, but I believe it's
Exactly.
possible. I think it takes time to do something like that, but I think it's
I'm gonna
possible.
say something, but can you imagine? I was just thinking this. Do you know how many witches are gonna pick up your book?
Yeah. You got to start somewhere, because you got to get your energy right. It's
Uh,
practical magic. It's stuff that when you start waking up and you start healing, you start feeling magic happening. And that's why I use the you, so that maybe people catch that, but they won't start with this sorcery if you want to be an actual sorcerer. You got to start with getting your energy right and healing and stuff like that, because you can make all your dreams come true. But if you have not healed yourself before you start manifesting your dreams, you could lose it all. Don't start helping people before you've helped yourself. That's the old airplane, with the oxygen
mhm.
mask first. Help yourself, because
Yeah.
you can't help anyone else. So it's important. My focus is healing, and there's a section in there on creating and manifesting an intention and how powerful that is. Life is so fair. You don't have to be healed to create your dream life. It's not a requirement by the universe to be healed. If you want to enjoy your dream life, you're going to want to start with healing, because not necessarily enjoy your dream life as much, because these tyrannical CEOs and all the movement and all these people got what their dreams and they're like, I need to have power. I need to screw with people. It brings them down. And many of them lost everything. Critical to start with healing before you start manifest. Heal first, because if you manifest your dream life, it could become a nightmare. Yeah.
And
So
it's so interesting because when we hear the word healing, we immediately think body, but we don't think about the mind, right? Healing
no, and
body, but the mind, our
I,
emotions.
yeah, I bet, the measuring it and everything, they'll figure out a way, especially brain mapping. I mean, trauma sits in our frontal lobe. It clouds. And so everything in our frontal lobe it manages your impulse control, your judgment, your personality. It's all regulated. So you'll see people, that are extremely impulsive, make really bad decisions. These are people their frontal lobe is just very clouded. And so you start clearing that up and it unlocks something spectacular. And I wrote a book on healing and created this thing that came out of the ether, the field. All information is held in this field. And once you clear up your trauma, you can connect to this field and anything can happen because all information that ever was or ever will be is in this source field, this unified field, the quantum field. And I believe anyone can become a genius. It's just a lot of people have the clouded frontal lobe, and that's where the healing comes in, is clearing up
Have
that
you
clouding.
read that book, The Body Keeps the Score?
I've read parts of it, haven't gotten all the way through, but yes, that's absolutely
And it's
the
based
truth.
on science and research.
It's a very famous book.
Vander Kolk.
Yeah,
He's a
there you go.
psychiatrist and he's been practicing. He's been in for 50 years and he's been doing a lot of research on trauma. He tells us how trauma gets stored in the body and then it shows up as certain illnesses. I mean, it makes sense in so
It,
many ways.
yeah, it's that it gets stored in the body and that subconscious. It's the old iceberg model, and we only use 10% of our minds, and it's that subconscious that's controlling our lives. So if our subconscious has a virus, we're programmed, we're walking computers. If we're not constantly checking our thoughts and our feelings before they become actions, we're just organic robots. So that's where the whole role-playing character thing, it's just, we have a lot of robots in society that are not conscious people. They're just going through their life, living their program. Anyone can wake up at any time. But if you're just running a program and your subconscious has a virus, your life is going to be disaster. Your shadow is running the life, is running the show. And every time the shadow is driving the car, it's going to drive it off a cliff. It is that shadow subconscious that needs attention first and foremost. And that is that it's kept in the body, and that is what is controlling our lives. So that is why one of the first rungs is about shadow work and diving into the subconscious and what is stored in there and how to start becoming more aware, more conscious. Because the number one thing that I see people that suffering is a lack of awareness. It's a lack of awareness. That is the number one reason why people suffer. And we don't
Um,
have to suffer, but
when
we
it
don't.
comes to your book, sorry, you have 13 rungs. Is there something specific about that number? Why 13 and not 12, for example?
Yeah. Yeah. So 13 was what came to me because I realized that goes into the subconscious and asking ourselves things. So the number 13 is very important because it is known in our society to be unlucky, which is crap. It's not true. So the number 13 is actually a very divine number. It's a feminine number. And in tarot, it is representative of death, rebirth, and transformation. And that's what kind of sorcery is all about. You death to the ego, this rebirth and transformation. And that's why I use, because immediately I want people to start realizing that 13, they've been lied to. And these are the things that I want to, you have to start questioning things that you hold true, because your beliefs are what's guiding your life. And so you have to start getting in there and say, what do I believe that's true? That am I carrying around someone else's beliefs? And the way you can tell you're carrying around other people's beliefs is if you're living in a lot of fear. So fear and joy are actually the same energy. So, that one energy is getting, when you're feeling fear, that one energy is getting filtered through your BS, your belief systems. If you're feeling a lot of fear in a moment, and I'm not talking about fear if you're standing on the edge of a cliff, that's legit fear. I'm talking about day-to-day fear. If you have a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, that's when you start mining the subconscious. And to do that in meditation is very good. But you start letting go of these beliefs and things that once you become more conscious, I'm feeling fear. What kind of beliefs is this energy being filtered through that I can let go of? Because joy is the same energy. It's just being filtered through beliefs that are really true. to start mining that subconscious and getting in there and start really digging in. And it can be difficult, painful at times, but it's so rewarding. It's just like once you get through that and you can really start letting go of things like magic, true magic starts happening. Sorcery.
You talk about something, the word that comes to mind is being mindfulness, right? So we tend to live either in the future or the past. And I think I heard once that living in the future, that's your anxiety, living in the past, that's that depression, and then living in the present where we actually should be mindful of things. It can make a huge difference in your life. But I did wanted to ask you something, like if someone is listening out there and they're feeling exhausted, spiritually numb, or quietly ashamed that perhaps nothing has worked. What do you want them to hear right now?
I would say, that first of all, there's hope. I like to call myself a hope dealer. So there is definitely hope and there is a framework to it. And if people out there are interested, I will gladly to start, like I said, mining the subconscious. And the best place to start is meditation. That is the best place to start. There's so many different ways in meditations. You can meditate to start creating a future for yourself and start calling that in. You can do a meditation of just calming and just trying to clear your mind. There's meditations where they're difficult, where you're bringing up painful memories of the past and you're feeling these things that you haven't felt a long time. Maybe you've been putting it off. And so what you resist will persist because if you don't feel it, you don't heal it. So a lot of people are suffering because they're not allowing themselves to feel. And
Right.
so meditation is the way to start feeling. So that's the
Mhm.
number one thing. And there's a lot of free meditation. There's guided meditations. You don't have to sit there in silence if that's too difficult. And especially to meditate can be difficult at first. But compared to going to a gym, if you go to a gym and you haven't gone your entire life and you're 30 years old and you weigh 350 pounds, that going to the gym is really difficult. But if you continue to go and you get the nutrition thing down and you continue, it starts to get easier. You start liking the going. And then your body says, yeah, we need this. And the serotonin starts going. You start getting high when you're doing it. And so that's the same thing with meditation. Like it takes some time and effort, but I knew it was something I had to do. And so there are guided meditations out there on Headspace and Calm. They have great meditations, I would say,
Give me
Insight Time. So yeah, there's great apps out there that are free and the Headspace and Calm and Insight Timer are
oh
all
yeah.
wonderful to get on your phone. They all have they have paid ones, but they have free ones as well.
Mhm.
YouTube has a ton of meditations. They're all guided, so it'll keep you focused. Start with guided. If you've never meditated before, start with guided. But there's a million ways to meditate, and you can.
There's so many apps. There's so many things. I think I started using one called Breathe. I think.
I know Calm and Headspace and Insight Timer. I know those I've used those; they're incredible. But yeah, I'd start with guided meditation. But that is where anyone who's struggling or suffering should start is meditation. Because I take a shower every day to wash off the grime of the previous day. It's the same thing with your mind. It's just wash it off and start anew. I start my day with meditation, end it with a meditation. But the one in the morning is just absolutely critical. I do a 30-minute yoga. I like stretching the body. It allows me to really drop right into the meditation. And then I meditate for half an hour. So that hour morning, that's non-negotiable for me. That has to happen
Right.
every single day.
And for those who don't have full time, I just divided. I do a 5-10 minute in the morning and then 15 in the evening. Anything, whatever works for
Anything.
you.
Yeah, it's just, that's what I
Exactly.
require, but everyone is different. But even just 5 minutes, like just something.
What I find powerful about the message you bring here is how the whole reframing illness, it's not as illness as failure or but actually is information, because what I appreciate actually about your work is that you don't seem to compete with medicine, therapy, or neuroscience. There's some people who are like way out there, no, that's bad, or something like that. So I feel like it's the wholeness. It feels in what's missing, meaning, connection, the purpose. And we know that we have learned, at least I've learned that healing is not linear. And honestly, before you go, I really want you to, I know I was mentioning what I like about your work, and healing is not, I found it is very relational. And
Mm.
I think sometimes the bravest thing that we can do is admit that we are necessarily, we're not broken, that perhaps we're just spiritually tired, or like you said, what was it that you call it? Spiritually
Spiritual
bankrupt?
bankrupt. Yeah.
bankrupt.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. Good news from
Well,
bankruptcy, you can always come back from it.
there you go. You can always put more money in the bank or something,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
That's
we
good.
can, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. And holistic healing is everything. Eastern and Western medicine do not have to be at odds. It could be a mixture of both. That's the best. Even if if pills
Mm-hmm.
things work for people, then that's fine. This can still this is holistic means being open to everything. And I
Oh,
like to
yeah.
say sorcery is not about answers; it's about questions.
Yeah.
So
I don't know
just
if you knew this, but I'm a nurse practitioner, work in neurology, and I kind of practice both. And I love doing the whole seeing people, not just for the physical ailments, but I also talk a lot about their emotional and all that, kind of like what you mentioned at the beginning. Before you go, I'm being curious and the whole comedian part of you. Can you give us a joke or something?
well, here I'll see. This is called mystical comedy. So
Okay.
this is one thing I like to leave. So this is just necessarily it's funny, but it's also gonna help. So I like to
Okay.
tell people there's this whole thing of live life like it's your last day, and I've been hearing that my whole life, and I don't think it's right. My last day would consist of I would wake up, I would not do my yoga or meditation. I would probably start drinking. I'd end up at a bar and I don't know, I might rob a pharmacy because who knows? So I don't think living your last day is the greatest advice. So I like to tell people live life like it's your first day because if you live life like it's your first day, now you've got an openness to
To
your
learn.
and the curiosity that this is the most
Yes.
important thing for healing for people is to start getting curious. And I had to get this out there before we ended because
Right.
curiosity is like a major step towards healing. If you start becoming curious about not just the world, but about other people, you interact with kind of a jerky person or like the whole Karen thing. You run into these people who make big deals out of absolutely nothing. Start getting curious. What's going on in there? What is going on in their life that they're reacting to this situation that's hardly anything? And they're becoming, do you need a hug? You start becoming curious. You don't then react because what they want is you to react to them and feed them the anger they desire because that is their addiction. Their addiction is anger. That anger is very charging and it's a very addictive emotion. So now they're wanting anger from you to feed their addiction. Stop that. What they'll hate the most is you being pleasant to them even through that. So getting curious about people and about the world. This is day one. And start getting curious about the world and everything, how beautiful everything is. It starts rewiring your mind. Healing starts to happen.
I always tend to ask, is there anything else that you want to say to our audience? Something that I have not asked you about that you really want people to get, that you want people to walk away with today?
There is always hope. There is healing. It can be difficult, but it can be also a lot of fun. It doesn't have to be a chore. And it's for people that want it. One of the main messages I have, especially for people that are struggling, and just want to tell people, let them struggle. There's options for them. That they know that there's options. Allow them to struggle. And I know it's difficult, but just allow it because they've been offered help and they know ways and there is help and they still continue to choose just
Don't enable them.
yeah, the enabling thing, I see a lot of that. I see a
Oh,
lot
yeah.
of enabling and they think they're helping and they want to help. And even going past enabling, just a lot of times people think enabling is like giving them money for drugs or something. No, just answering the phone when they're calling and they want to complain and they want to pass their stuff to you.
Not
Like
creating
here's my
boundaries.
here's
Yeah.
my drama. I want to dump it on you and I'm going to hang up and go on with my life. Just answering the phone can be a form of enabling. Just, if they come around
Right.
great and a lot of people
Sometimes
but
you have to walk away for certain people. You have to protect your own energy. You have to
yeah,
protect yourself
absolutely.
because
Yeah.
that's part of that idea of gotta heal yourself first before you want to help other people. And so
Yep. Yeah,
sometimes
it's a
that's part
must.
of it.
Yeah.
And exactly. You're welcome
Yep.
to come back anytime you want
Yeah.
to the
Oh, yeah,
podcast.
there's we could have a whole series on this stuff. It's just
For sure.
fantastic. But
Well, I just want to say for everybody out there, if this conversation resonated with you, I encourage you to connect with Justin and explore his work. You can find his book, right? Sorcery
mm,
101, 13 Rungs to a Higher Elevation of Consciousness. And his teachings about his community through links. I will put it on the description. And if you're listening and thinking this feels like my language, just trust that instinct. Curiosity is often that first rung that he mentions. So, Justin, do you have a website?
yeah, it's called awakenthesorcerer.com, spelled with a U. So that the website's there. And I do have the book on audio too. And it's on Audible too. So that's on the website and it's on Audible and I think Spotify too. And my email, which I guess you put in there.
Justin, thank you so much for being here with us today. For everybody out there, continue to live life unscripted.